start to turn it around.
If we all could love one another, all the world could be as one. Just take time to love one another, all the world could be as one. Black man, white man, standing together, no more fighting to be done. Yellow, red man, dancing together, all the world could be as one.
And welcome to ToHealDC. This is Joni. It is Monday, June 3rd, and we have a very special show for you today. We're going to be speaking about two very important topics. Our first, we're going to, in a moment, introduce C.R. Gibbs. He's going to be talking about a historic raid that we don't hear enough about by Harriet Tubman, June 2nd, 1863, where she helped to free 700 enslaved persons. We're going to be talking to Mr. Gibbs in one moment. And then the second half of the show, we're going to be speaking with Tia Bell. The month of June is National Gun Violence Prevention Month, and Tia Bell is an activist in our community organizing a major end gun violence prevention activity on Friday. So we're going to be talking to Tia in the second half of the show. I just wanted to also thank everybody who made pledges during our pledge drive. We really appreciate you. You're the only way we stay on the air. Also, I wanted to mention, some of you may have heard our show a while back or earlier last month on Unity Healthcare, which is a very important institution in D.C., 20 clinics throughout the city, serving, I think, something like over 60,000 people. They're undergoing a crisis. Many physicians have quit. I encourage you to check out the Washington Post today. Has a major story on what's happening with Unity, and we'll be picking that up again in the future. I see my friend Chuck and Jeremiah are on the line, so we give them a invisible shout out here, wave. And we're going to jump right in now to C.R. Gibbs. As I've often said, C.R. Gibbs is often called the godfather of Black history in Washington, D.C. He is a special treasure amongst us in Washington. Those of you who do not know him, I would encourage you to check him out. Google him or come to some of his upcoming activities that he's often speaks in the community. He is an author of over 6 books. One of his well-known books is I'm sorry, Mr. Gibbs. Welcome. Help me out. Tell us the name of your. I'm sorry,
morning,
I'm doing
Joni.
too
Good
many
morning.
things here. So good morning, CR. Tell us that wonderful book that we always talk about.
Among my books are I'm the co-author of Black Georgetown Remembered. I'm also the author of Black, Copper, and Bright, the District of Columbia's Black Civil War Regiment, a bit appropriate, even more so for today. And I'm also the author of Black Inventors from Africa to America. I'm also author of a children's book called Friends of Frederick Douglass and the Afro-American Inventor. So that's some of my work. And I will be lecturing at the Woodridge Library, not Woodbridge, not in Virginia, Woodridge, on the 18th of June with a lecture called Juneteenth, the Next Frontier.
Oh, and wow.
The premise is simple. It asks the question, what happened the day after Juneteenth? I mean, we know about June 19th, but the situation, what was it like to be Black and in Texas the day after Juneteenth? And so I'll bring in a couple of other things as well, but that's what's happening on June 18th.
And June 18th, Mr. Gibbs, what day of the week is that?
That is a Tuesday.
That is a Tuesday. So a week
June
from Tuesday.
At 6 o'clock.
Yes, so that'll be a week from Tuesday, correct?
Yeah.
Wow. So listeners, people who can check out C.R. Gibbs, it is a treasure we have in our community. It's a wonderful opportunity to hear him, to meet him in person. Those library discussions are great. And of course, coming up on Juneteenth, I know Mr. Gibbs will be doing other events, as I'm told. But this next Tuesday, June 18th, at 6 p.m. at the Woodridge Library.
18th and Rhode Island Avenue Northeast.
Yes. So we hope to see you, a lot of listeners out there. Okay, C.R. Gibbs, yesterday was a very historic day, which, of course, we heard very little about. We hear about, of course, we know Harriet Tubman. We know the enslaved people that she helped sneak out of the different places in Cambridge, Maryland, and go up north. But something happened on the evening of June 1st, 1863, which is perhaps her most significant achievement. So Mr. Gibbs is going to tell us the story of the river raid in South Carolina that happened many years ago, but is still important. So, C.R., tell us this very important story.
It's important that we know, and particularly at a time when there are people out there trying to say she didn't free that many people, or things like that. That on between June 1st and June 2nd, 1863, she was part of a military operation in which she helped to free more than 700 people in South Carolina. Some of us, have this box that we put the Black Moses in, which is Maryland and the Underground Railroad. No, one of the reasons we honor her so deeply is because she did so much in so many places. We forget that even after this, after the river raid, in down south, it's pronounced Combahee. But it's a raid on the Combahee Ferry. Doing it the way the Yankees might have done it, it's Combhee ferry, actually. And but this is one of the things she did. It is, in terms of sheer impact, perhaps the largest, as I say. The experts debate between 700 and 800 people, where she guided a regiment of soldiers to rescue and transport Black folk from slavery in the rice swamps of South Carolina to freedom. An extraordinary event, an extraordinary woman. Just parenthetically, let me also say that we also don't study Mother Tubman in terms of her work as a suffragette. So there's so much more to her than the Underground Railroad in Maryland. And I want to thank Joni for giving me the opportunity to talk about the raid up the Combahee River, or Combahee, and in Beaufort and Colleton counties in the South Carolina Low Country.
And Mr. Gibbs, apparently there was a big celebration yesterday in South Carolina. I believe they finally erected a special statue of Harriet Tubman for what she did. And we may have some of the people come back later in the summer and talk about that experience. I know Tina Wyatt, who's Harriet Tubman's descendant, was there, and other people that we know. But tell us, Mr. Gibbs, why was this what exactly did Harriet do, and how did she do it, and why was it so important?
The governor of Massachusetts, John Andrew, and others had asked her to use her talents down in a place far away from Maryland. They asked her to come down and to help them with a critical situation near Port Royal and in South Carolina. What we have is perhaps thousands of enslaved people who became free. They were in desperate need of food and medicine and the basic tools of freedom. And so she left Maryland and went down there.
How do you think she went down there, Mr. Gibbs? Well, she didn't have a car.
No, she did. No, we're looking at horseback and boat, and because of her national reputation, in the wake of the capture of the town, people asked her to come and give help. And when people heard that Harriet was involved, or even more people came, we had abolitionists, we had people we had educators. So all of these people came down to Beaufort County, South Carolina, and helped her nurse and ultimately free hundreds of Black folk in that area in South Carolina. It was an extraordinary, when you realized the size of the project and that we had a regiment of Black soldiers who were involved. And this is in relation to the fact that the Union Navy and Army troops invaded Port Royal, south of Charleston, near the town of Beaufort. And they occupied most of that area. And of course, freedom-seeking Black folk tried to get away from their former masters as far and as fast as they could. But with all of these people flooding in the area, they needed help. And several Union Army infantry regiments were formed with these freedom-seeking Black folk, including the 2nd South Carolina Infantry under Colonel James Montgomery. And James, who had fought in the guerrilla battles in bloody Kansas, he knew what was needed, and he understood and was aware of the contributions of Harriet Tubman. And so as more and more Black people came, they heard the stories of suffering and harrowing tales of people denied their rights. They decided to go ahead and make a bold bid for freedom and justice. And so we had the raid on the Combahee Ferry. Let's use the word that and pronounce it the way the folks down that way. So 3 small ships left Beaufort and headed for the Combahee, and they brought along Black soldiers from the 2nd South Carolina Regiment and the Company C of the 3rd Rhode Island Heavy Artillery, primarily white unit. But they knew that in the space of time between Harriet's arrival and the beginning of the assault on the Combahee Ferry, she had worked with Black folk. In fact, Harriet's reputation was such that she formed her own squad of spies and scouts and began to infiltrate that area, learning where the Black folk were. And we don't give her enough credit for really learning a different language, because the patois, if you will, used in the South Carolina Sea Islands was much different from that in Maryland. So she also had to learn how to communicate. But there was one strong bond, whether Black people were in Maryland or in South Carolina, and that was the desire to be free. So she helped to guide the Union soldiers through the swamps and the underbrush, and they landed near the Nichols Plantation, and a Union gunboat came along. So we're talking about Union infantry. We're talking about naval forces that participated in the raid on the Combahee Ferry. And yet few people know that she did that, and that they also destroyed Confederate stocks and supplies. All of this deserves to be much further known. So there are, my strongest recommendation is that if you want to move Mother Harriet out of the little box of Maryland and the Underground Railroad, take a broader look at her work in the suffrage movement and the extraordinary courage that she demonstrated guiding Union soldiers and naval vessels in and around the Combahee River at the beginning of June in 1863.
Absolutely. And Mr. Gibbs, we have a couple of young people that are on the line with us or in the studio. I'm going to see if they might have a question. We have Jeremiah Larry. And Jeremiah, if you had a question for Mr. Gibbs, you can jump in now or jump in later. This is a very important story. You know, we know about, many of us do know about Harriet at Cambridge, Maryland, and many of us in D.C. have taken trips out there to Cambridge, but we don't hear about this particular feat that she did in 1863, which really involved a lot more people. And of course, many of us believe that this is probably intentional, in the part of the powers that be, that we don't hear about this amazing thing that Harriet did. But there was yesterday, I believe, a statue that was erected in a big celebration in Beaufort. There's a new book that's been written about this, and we hope to have the author on perhaps later in the summer. But it's a very important struggle that we need to learn more about. Jeremiah, do you have a question?
Oh yeah, Joni, I got a question. Thank you so much, Mr. Gibbs. I really appreciate this conversation. I would love to hear, speaking of young people, I would love to hear from your perspective, how do we reach more young people so they know about this history? Because this is, I think we all agree, this is extremely important information that young people need to know about. So, Mr. Gibbs, if you have any suggestions on how do we, maybe reach more young people to ensure that they, know about this history.
I'm sorry. Yes, certainly, Brother Jeremiah, we have to be the people that tell the story. We have for too long rested our history in the hands of people who, for whatever interest or lack thereof, didn't tell it. Maybe they didn't know, but now there is no excuse. We must become the griots, jegnas, and jelly mousses. What does all of that mean? It means that we have to tell the story. You must tell the story to your friends and associates. You guys can do reports on it. You can come to lecture series and learn so much more about our history. I've been going in and out of the schools now for 40 years, and the complaint I get from many young people is that we hear about the same 5 people or every Black History Month. Well, it doesn't have to be that way, and you should not believe that because you know one thing about them that that's all they ever did. So I'm putting the responsibility squarely where I believe it belongs, on parents and grandparents, on the young people themselves, to share what you know. And again, a marvelous thing about the raid on the Combahee Ferry and those 2 days is the fact that it's largely unknown, but it reveals so much more. Mother Tubman was a spy, a scout. I mean, she's making connections in a place she is unfamiliar with, but again, united with our ancestors' drive to be free and willing to fight for their freedom. Yes, we prayed. There's no doubt about it. We got on our knees and we implored. But when and where necessary, it is critical that young people understand we also fought. We were willing to share, to shed blood. And Harriet herself says that one of the first, when she nursed the soldiers who had been wounded in the attack on the ferry, one of the first people she saw, she knew the bullets had torn this brother's body, and yet she waded in. We believe that she also had a knowledge of herbal medicine that she used to treat many of the soldiers. And she writes about how they were trying to evacuate the freedom-seeking Black folk up on these Union naval vessels. And, she might have she saw women carrying their babies. I think she may have picked up livestock or a pig or 2 and put one under both arms and ran up the gangplank. I mean, this is personal history that you might never get. And so as you learn, you teach. There used to be a saying of a black female organization, lifting as we climb, lifting as we climb. And that's what we have to be about. We don't have to wait in these days when we have more information about Black history than we've ever had before. So we must take a bigger responsibility for sharing it. Learn and share and construct reading lists. So there is a new book out. There are more coming out. And there's a side piece to this history of this race. The statue that Joni referred to, which has been unveiled, was crafted by a former Black astronaut who just within the last week or so, nearly the age of 100, I'm talking about Ed White, who has a number of works in this area, including a statue of Douglass at the Frederick Douglass home in Southeast. That brother's nearly 100 years old, and yet he just got back from going into space. There's just, they're like wagon spokes. I mean, you get a central story, but as you begin to study them in more detail, you learn more and more and more about people like Ed Dwight, who's still making a contribution at just on the edge of 100 years of age.
Wow. And where does he live, Mr. Gibbs? Do you know where he lives?
I'm sorry?
Would you know where the gentleman lives?
I don't recall just this minute, but he does have an internet presence because he's done so many statues. Like I said, if you want to see his work, you have no excuse not to get to the Frederick Douglass home at 1411 W Street Southeast, and you'll see this marvelous statue of Frederick Douglass done by the Black man who opened it up for the Black presence in America's race for space. If that doesn't show a connection between history and the present, I don't know what does. Now, the statue in Beaufort, South Carolina, we believe that it costs somewhere around $1 million. And depending upon which source you use, it took either 6 years or 8 years for the residents in and around Beaufort to collect that money dollar by dollar and dime by dime and put this wonderful monument up of her seeming to rise up out of the circumstances around her. So you can see her, you can see all that. You can read about it. You can download pictures to tell you about the connection between the first Black man to be trained as an American astronaut who became a sculptor. He didn't let the fact that he didn't get a fair shake in the American Astronaut Corps stop him. He had more than one plate he brought to the feast, and so he became an internationally noted sculptor.
And now, say his name again, Mr.
Dwight.
Gibbs.
His name is Ed Dwight.
Ed White. And place this whole situation of June 2nd, 1863 in the context of the Civil War. What was going on then? And I'm just reading that this was after the Emancipation Proclamation. Is that correct?
That's correct. The Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863, opened the door for wider recruitment of African Americans into the Union Army, but Black men had been serving in the Union Navy as early as September 1861. As the battles intensified in the Civil War. In fact, this June 1863, they're recruiting for the Black regiment in the District of Columbia. You know, there are people Black men from Maryland and other states who are coming to D.C. They're flooding the recruiting stations in Maryland. It is, in the context of its time, a marvelous display of the willingness of Black folk to put their lives on the line for their freedom. This was something, as one of the men said, you know, they were fighting for freedom. They were fighting, Joni, they said, for their natural manhood.
And
it could not have been more important. And even in D.C., as blasé as you might think D.C. was, it was thrilling for people to see the soldiers from this city's regiment, about which very little is known, in Union Blue.
And Mr. Gibbs,
in fact,
yes. Let me just interrupt. I neglected to play a little piece of a song to introduce this issue. So, but we still have a few minutes left. We're going to play a little snip of this song to get the spirit of 1863, and then we'll come right back with Mr. C.R. Gibbs.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. As we go marching on, we are colored Yankee soldiers who've enlisted for the war. We are fighting for the Union. We are fighting for the Lord. We nation to a rebel cause than a white man ever saw. As we go marching on.
We just had to play a little bit of that song. That's Chuck Hicks' favorite song. We read it makes you want to go out there and march, Mr. C.R. Gibbs. Again, so keep telling us. We have a few more minutes left. The spirit of what was happening in Washington, D.C. and what was happening down there in South Carolina. I'm just reading, apparently folks down there did not know that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. That sounds familiar. So give us a little bit more of the feeling of the importance of that day. And I'm not sure if this is outside of the topic, but Robert Smalls, say if he was connected at all to this important event that happened in 1863. Uh-oh, I hope we didn't... See, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still with you.
I'm sorry. So tell us, kind of round it out now, because we have a few more minutes left, about what was happening in D.C., what was happening in South Carolina. Apparently, the folks didn't know that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed back in January. And I don't know if Robert Smalls is connected with this particular situation or not. I know he's from the area.
He's from the area, and we have to just at least touch on the fact that he was an enslaved pilot on the Confederate sidewheel steamer, the Planter, and he and his crew, bringing their families, sailed it to freedom. I mean, this is a guy where they would tell us we don't have the brains to command a ship. We can't handle soldiers, and he proved them to be all alive. And he has become an eternal hero in the annals of Black history in South Carolina. Imagine being born enslaved, having enough potential to show that he could handle that ship. And again, when at the right time and in the right place, he said, I would be free or die. I would be free or die. So he brought that large prize vessel out from under the Confederate guns and sailed it into the Union forces. It was a large ship. It was a rich prize to give the Union. And remember, now we're talking about an area right around Beaufort, South Carolina. So the connection, and that's where Smalls was born, as I recall. In the many enslaved people in and around the Combahee River ferry first learned of it by hearing the sounds of shooting and explosions, and they ran down to the river and they saw these Union vessels and they said, come get us, we're ready, just give us the chance. And we'll hop on, despite the fact that there are people teaching nonsense in several locations. about how we didn't want to be free and all that. Even Harriet Tubman, bless her heart, she said, I never saw such a sight. And she was referring to the fact that the people were gathering on the riverbank, even with the shooting and explosions. They wanted to be taken on board the ships. They were grabbing everything. As I mentioned earlier, she says you'd see a woman with a pail on her head, rice smoking in the pail of rice, young ones hanging on behind with the babies hanging on them, running up the gangplank to get on these vessels. It was extraordinary. And I think this is one where after the battle, Joni, she writes a letter saying that she wanted, her dress had been torn and she wanted to get a pair of bloomers. For you young folk, what does Sherry say? If you don't know, ask your mama. If you never heard of bloomers, look them up. That gave her more freedom to operate, to work harder to help these people get off of the bloodstained soil of South Carolina and get on these Union vessels. So it's important. And again, understand that this is happening within the freedom context, and it's including Washington, D.C., which is organizing they're recruiting because the Southern forces and Southern attitudes were so strong in D.C. Some people would say not only back then, but now as well, they had to organize the Black Regiment from D.C. on what is now Theodore Roosevelt Island. And oftentimes the men who were recruited for the regiment and joining it had to make it to the island in the middle of the Potomac River opposite the Kennedy Center to join the 1st Regiment United States Colored Troops. It's called that because there were other Black regiments, such as the 1st and 2nd South Carolina, that were older, but the regiment from D.C. was the first one directly mustered into the Union Army. So we have a cornucopia, if you will, of events surrounding our freedom, our dignity, our desire to fight for it. It's an extraordinary story.
Wow, it is.
Typified by what Harriet Tubman did in guiding these with her own squad now. And I know I've seen records on at least she tried to get a pension for at least one of her squad of scouts.
Wow. You're listening to Mr. C.R. Gibbs. This is ToHealDC with me, Joni. I have some young people here, and one young lady doesn't want to ask a question yet, but maybe she will. And also Jeremiah Lowry on the phone. I'm not sure, we're supposed to be having Tia Bell coming on next, but she may be a little late. She's having a very important event okay, she is coming on now. So CR, your final words, and we're so thankful that you could join us. Again, you can check out Mr. C.R. Gibbs next Tuesday, June 18th at 6 p.m. at the Woodridge Library, and I'm sure he's going to be doing more engagements too for Juneteenth. Thank you so much, C.R. Your final thought.
For those who want to read, we don't know where the after action or battle reports are, but I can tell you to try and find the account of the raid itself on the Boston Commonwealth, the Boston Commonwealth newspaper. I think it's from around June 10th or so. There's even a pro-Southern Charleston Mercury report. Needless to say, the rebels were apoplectic that a huge force of Black Union soldiers had come into their midst and done about $1 million worth of damage to the Confederate infrastructure, in addition to freeing some 700 formerly enslaved Black folks.
Thank you, Mr. C.R. Gibbs. He is a godfather of Black history in Washington, D.C., a treasure amongst us. If I had a magic wand, I would make sure we heard him every day. But we appreciate you, Mr. Gibbs, and we're going to now switch real quick to talking about what is happening on Friday, an extremely important event. And June is National Gun Violence Prevention Month. We have, I know she wouldn't want me to call her the star, but she is she is a star to many of us, a very special sister who is really leading the way when it comes to issues around gun violence. I want to also welcome Damien, who's joining us on the phone. Tia, let's see, maybe we have a minute, Mikey, to play that song we picked out about gun violence, and we'll be right back with Tia.
Beautiful.
He was such a young man, trying hard to do the best he can. He had a right to live. He had a right to live. He had a God-given right, God-given right. But a gunshot ended it all he ever had to give. He had a right to live. He was a young man. He had a right to live. And a gun, he had a right to live. All that he had to give was ended, but
that is a song by In Process, who's part of the ToHealDC family. Tia Bell, we're so thankful that you could join us today. First of all, tell us about June being National Gun Violence Prevention Month, and also tell us about the Trigger Project, which you helped to lead. And then we'll jump into what's happening on Friday.
You said it's actually Gun Violence Awareness Month. We need to pick out a month for Gun Violence Prevention Month because I feel as a people we're very aware. But it is amazing to have the color orange symbolize what it means to be a survivor. We view gun violence through a public health lens, so we believe everyone is exposed to the disease. But just paying homage to actually how this month started, the mother of Hadia Pendleton, who was a young lady killed in Chicago, chose orange to symbolize awareness and fought hard to have national recognition of this month. So we want to pay homage to her.
And speak a little louder, life. Tia. A little louder.
Okay. Okay.
Uh-oh. Uh-huh. Keep talking.
To honor Hadia Pendleton from Chicago, a young person whose life was lost too soon, but also a young person whose life sparked the change that we're seeing today. And that's honestly what the festival is about as well. This Friday, June 7th, is Gun Violence Awareness Day. We 4th annual End Gun Violence Conference Festival, and I'll share a little bit of why we call it both. But we're asking for people to join us, for survivors for all walks of life, to join us at Franklin Park from 11 to 4. And we're also asking that you register on Eventbrite so that you can get your free swag and shirt and name badge, because just like a professional development day, we're going to have 2 hours of experts speaking, which will be in the conference form of a conference style. And then we're going to do breakout sessions where we plan as a people prevention for the summer, prevention for our city and what it looks like in 5 years, and then prevention and community transformation and what that looks like in 20 years. So if you want to be a part of healing, fellowship, growing, and especially planning, we invite you to come to the first part of the day. Kicking off at 2:30, we'll have the notorious T.O.B. band play. And then we have youth artists and youth presentations following them. So this day is still centered in our youth's greatness and in the protection of them, the future protection and spreading of prevention.
So this is definitely a youth-focused conference and festival. And Tia, real quick, tell us why did you get involved with this issue?
Yeah, so I'm the founder of the Trigger Project. Trigger stands for True Reasons I Grabbed the Gun Evolved from Risk. And we're trying to change the norm and narrative of gun violence, hence why we call it a disease and not just a crime. That's a part of our narrative change. And then the normalcy, the acceptance of gun violence that impacts disproportionately Black people is nationwide. So we're working with researchers to really change how people look view this disease.
And you had people in your family that have been impacted.
Every decision is made. And so I noticed about 5 years ago in the pandemic, or 4 years maybe, we were in the middle of the pandemic, and I was being in so many different working groups across the city that were focused on gun violence.
Tia, you're breaking up a little bit. You're breaking up a little bit. Let me ask Damian Bascom, if you had a question or a comment, you can jump in. And Tia, try to make sure you're sitting somewhere where we get to hear you fully.
Oh no, is this better?
Yes.
Yeah, that's much better, Tia.
Okay, I apologize. I was saying, did you all hear me say I founded the Trigger Project?
Yes, but just tell us about your
great.
family, how your family was impacted real quick.
Yeah, so as a youngin, growing up in D.C., my mother was a victim of gun violence, shot in broad day twice by other women. And so I was familiar with interpersonal gun violence. And then, 20 years later, we're still seeing the same victims.
Yeah, you're breaking up.
and shooters, the people behind the gun. Dang, I'm saying so much. Is this better?
Yes.
Damian, go ahead. But yeah, I'm a survivor because my mother was impacted. And I've just noticed that our city works tremendously in silos. And so we're trying to bring everyone together. That's the point of the day, the point of the festival.
Absolutely. Damian, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes. Tia, the work that you're doing, I'm proud of you. The vision, the wisdom, the intelligence of organizing something like this. You can speak to this. This festival conference is going to be a resource center for not also the youth, but people that are involved with youth organizing and youth that are looking for more resources in our city. Tia, can you speak to that a little bit of the different things that people can experience? The sponsorships and the different tables and resources that's going to be all in this place on this day?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. And Tia, you already have 700 young people registered. That is fabulous.
Yeah, that is that it didn't the speaker before me talk about that magical number. So no, that's the goal. We have about 400 people registered. But in terms of Damian's question, we wanted to personify what it means to be a protective factor. So when you look at gun violence as a disease, there are risk factors that lead to you being falling on either side of the gun. So just like if you were trying to avoid cancer spreading, you wouldn't smoke more cigarettes. So if you're trying to avoid gun violence from spreading, you are getting a mentor, or you're making sure you go to school, or you are practicing faith. That is a protective factor that CDC says. So in terms of that, in terms of personifying it at the festival, we have over 60 vendors who are providing either an opportunity, resource to everyone at the festival. And the tables will be basically outlining the entire festival, so it serves as everybody, sort of being protected by all of our partners that have agreed to come in and be a part of that. And so in terms of the layout for the day, there'll be a youth village that will center youth development and engagement. There'll be a survivors village where we'll have resources from like victim services and housing justice partners, and even life insurance. People come in to provide life insurance that'll be around the survivors. Then we have the healing village, which will also be a part of the sober living village. And so sobriety is the lack of sobriety is a risk factor to gun violence. And so if you want to come and claim your journey, or maybe just practice sobriety during the festival, we have a space for you to do that, find resources, to not find any judgment, but to find support. We'll also, in the healing village, we'll have yoga therapists leading healing sessions throughout the entire time. And then we have like a massage therapist or two come in
Yes,
to
and
provide the touch. So we have all of these villages, and there's a space specifically for kids 10 and under, because Franklin Park is beautiful and has a playground attached. And then we'll have Cure the Streets, protecting all of the entrances. They are violence interrupters, and they'll serve as the gatekeepers of the festival. So we're being very intentional. Again, we do believe that public safety personnel, so that's the police and the judges, and we do believe they are a part of this fight, but they shouldn't be leading the charge. They should be following suit under public health, which means community and health-based experts. And I'm proud to say that American Public Health Association will come and make some remarks as well.
Wow. That is great. Well, I can remember when they first declared, APHA first declared gun violence a public health issue back in the 90s. But I'm so glad that they're going to be there. For people who do not know, Tia, where Franklin Park is, tell them.
Yes, the address is 1332 I Street Northwest. It is by the Park Restaurant. If you're young, it may be a brunch down there. It's the park right across the street. But that is the drop-off location where you'll enter through a whole bunch of orange balloons and get your swag bag, and then, have the festival open up to you. We'll have free
what? We can't hear you.
Free amenities.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll have free food for everybody, free swag. And again, we'll have all of the amenities, the moon bounce, the massages,
Yes.
the speakers, presenters, artists, all the good stuff.
Yes, and Damien's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Folks, we really encourage you to check this out. This is a very special event. It's very inspiring. There are a lot of young people there. There are serious discussions, but there are also joyful presentations. I can remember last year meeting the yoga instructors, Damien. I hope you get to meet them if you haven't yet. And I promised they would be on the air. It's very inspired folks who are involved with this festival. It's a festival. And all kinds of speakers, presenters, artists. And so, Tia, take us through, again, I know at 11 a.m. there is a press conference. Some of us will be there for the press conference. And then it kind of kicks off at 12 and goes till 4. So can you just kind of take us a little bit each hour? What is going to be happening at 12 noon?
Yes. So 11, again, I think it's worth noting for the press conference. We have some youth. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. We have youth who will be presenting during the press conference about research that they're participating in with the National Institute of Justice. We have Senator Brown, our shadow senator, who will come and make remarks. The Office of Attorney General Brian Schwab, who believes and invests in prevention. He'll come and make some remarks as well. So there'll be some notable speakers during that first hour, 11 to 12. And then at 12, we open up the vendor tables, the food, the different villages that I just spoke about. And then we have our opening remarks by one of our young people. And then we'll go into about 6 different presentations and about 4 different panels between 12 and 2 p.m. And that is with intention to prepare people to go feeling equipped into those breakout sessions, because every year we've walked away with a community-led plan. If you're hearing my voice right now, don't let anyone tell you that there's not a plan to prevent gun violence in this city, because we have 3 of them that have been created, all at the other 3 conference festivals. So we're going to sort of refine those plans this year, and again, focus on the short, medium, and long-term vision for our city. And then again, from 2:30 to 4, it's just all music, a live go-go band, a youth live go-go band, and then just our babies grabbing the mic so that they feel seen and know that they are, the prevention that we need to see.
And folks, we really encourage folks, if you don't have to be on your so-called JOB that day, come out there. It is a very, very, very inspiring, important event that really everybody should come to. Right, Damien? And you
definitely. This is something. Start the summer off, man, and get connected to the resources and be a part of the solution in our community.
Yes.
And that's something we say, oh, here comes the summer, here comes more gun violence. And, that's a normalcy in community, but it's actually research that proves it. So we're going to be intentional about teaching our people that we are the experts. We are closest to this disease, and the solutions really lie within, our hearts and our brains. And so this day is about empowerment and just positioning us to be at the table and not on the menu.
And we have about 2 more minutes left or so, Tia. So maybe share with us 1 or 2 of the major initiatives that you would, if you had a magic wand for 2024 and 25, what would be some of the things you would make sure happened in DC?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Tell
Beautiful.
us.
Okay. We're going into, so after the festival, we're going to be kicking off our 7th summer of Summer Youth Employment Programming. We call it, everyone knows it as SYP belovedly, but we say Trigger University. And so our youth are paid to come and learn about themselves and then, create prevention projects and spread prevention within. And so before that happens, though, as a host, I have learned that there are almost 8,000 youth who will not have a summer job opportunity this year.
And why is
if
that?
I could wave a magic wand, there's not enough positions. There's not enough positions.
There's not enough money, in other words.
In other words, it's been some funding taken away, but I was trying to focus on the positive.
Well, but Tia, let me just say this: it's really important to tell the truth. We are talking about children's lives, and I wasn't quite aware that Marion Barry Summer Youth Program has been cut. I mean, that's something that we at WPFW should know. I don't have the details off the top of my head, but that should be known widely. That is unacceptable.
Yes.
So
we're
if you have any
festival, we're going to use the stage to bring attention to it, because right now the culture, the narrative, remember, we're trying to change the narrative, and the narrative is that youth are pulling the trigger. But it's more than youth, but youth are being blamed right now.
Yes.
And so if we have a chance to give 8,000 opportunities out, I would fall in love with that, because we could prevent. We could be before the gun is picked up, before the trigger is pulled, before there's somewhere that they don't know is a high exposed area. We could be in a position to prevent them.
Yes, and Tia, I'm sorry, we're out of time. We want to encourage Damien and I want to encourage you to. We'd like to share these messages that you have throughout the year with some of your young people. So we're going to be in touch with you more about that. Again, that is this Friday from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. The Trigger Project's annual festival. Come out and meet some young people. Talk to some young people. 11 to 4 at Franklin Park. I want to thank our wonderful engineer, Mike Nacella. I want to thank Damien and Sherry, who's sitting quietly by, and Jeremiah. I want to also let you know that next week we're going to be focusing on Black Fathers. Chuck Hicks is organizing his annual Black Fathers motorcade through the city on June 15th. So we'll be talking about Black Fathers next week. We also will be seeing some of you out on Saturday, June 8th. There's a major demonstration, national demonstration to stop the war in Gaza. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. I hope to see, Damien and I hope to see some of you on Friday, and I'm sure I'll see some of you out in those streets on Saturday. Thank you very much, Tia, for what you're doing, and we'll see you on Friday. We're going out with a song we came in by with In Process.
Bless you, Joni. We are prevention.
Bless you, Tia.
right, God-given right, but a gunshot ended it all. He ever had to give her the right to live. He was a young man. He had a right to live. And a gun, he had a right to live.